I'm back. I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that this isn't the video you guys were expecting, so I apologize for that. You guys remember back in my Captain Marvel review where I briefly mentioned my top 5 MCU movies? But I wouldn't have it in my top 5 MCU movies list. That's the video I'm giving you today. So again, I apologize if you're expecting a review of Endgame. I might make one later down the line. I don't know. There's not a lot that hasn't been said about the movie already, so I don't know if I can bring anything new to the table. So without further ado, here is my list of the top 5 MCU movies. Please take into consideration that this is based solely on my opinion, so if your favorite MCU movie is not on this list, please don't get mad at me. Also, I am not going to include any of the Avengers movies because if I did, they would take up 4 spots on the list. So, here we go! As you can see by the title, I am doing an Amazon gift card giveaway. If you want to know how to enter, stick around until the end of the video. To start off this list, I'm going to have to go with Spiderman Homecoming. I know that there's been a lot of talk about this movie being a good movie, but not a good Spider-Man movie. I don't care. I like the movie. Tom Holland is probably the best portrayal of this character that we've seen yet, excluding the animated series and video games. He brings the character to life with a perfect balance of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Now don't get me wrong, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were both really good actors in their roles, but they were really only good in one aspect of the character. I grew up with the Sam Raimi movies, so for me, Tobey Maguire was my Spider-Man growing up. But when you rewatch these movies, you notice that he's not really an amazing Spider-Man. Did you guys like my pun? Spider-Man is supposed to be quippy, energetic, and fun. But when Tobey's playing Spider-Man, he's kind of bland and boring. Whereas with Andrew Garfield, it's pretty much the opposite. When he's playing Peter Parker, he's kind of a jerk and he's not really that nerdy other than when he's working on his projects. But when he's Spider-Man, he's quippy, he's funny, he's really energetic. But with Tom Holland, he brings to life both aspects of the character that we've come to know and love. When he's Peter, he's dorky, awkward, and kind of funny in a geeky way. But when he's Spider-Man, he's funny, quippy, and really energetic. That's how we've come to know this character, so it's really nice to finally see an accurate representation on the big screen. But even with Tom Holland's amazing performance, this movie still struggles with what all Spider-Man movies struggle with. They won't take him out of school. I mean, really, how hard is it to have a Spider-Man movie when he's not in school? Every live-action Spider-Man movie we've had to this point has had Peter in high school or college. Tom Holland is 22 years old at the time of this recording. So why can't we just get Spider-Man as an adult? I mean, Spider-Man for the PS4 did that, and that's a great game. Otherwise, this movie's plot summed up is Peter having a crush on a girl at school, going to homecoming with her, finding out her dad is the Vulture, fighting him, and dealing with the stress of trying to save as many people as possible even though he's only 15. As per every MCU movie, the CGI is good, the actors are good, the plot is good, everything is just good. Nothing really stands out about this movie. It's just kind of another run-of-the-mill MCU movie. On to the number 4 spot. My number 4 spot is going to have to go to Doctor Strange. You know, I was really surprised when this movie came out. When I heard that Benedict Cumberbatch was going to be playing the Sorcerer Supreme, I was a bit skeptical. Most people probably knew him from Sherlock, and were excited to see their favorite detective playing another brilliant, arrogant man of science. But before this movie, I didn't really know much about him. Sure, I knew he was on Sherlock, but what little I had heard about him, I hadn't heard very many good things. But regardless, I was really surprised when this movie came out. Sure, it's just another MCU movie, but this one is just a little bit different. It's one of those movies where after you watch it, it kind of makes you question things about yourself that you've never even thought of before. For example, in one part of the movie, the Ancient One is dying and Doctor Strange is trying to save her. She explains to him that even though she knew her own death was coming, she doesn't really try to avoid it. She knows that her death has a purpose, so she's somewhat willing to die for that cause. She's done her part to keep the universe safe, so she's done well in her book. So you think to yourself, if you knew your own death was coming, would you try to stop it, or would you just let it happen? If you knew that everything you had done up to this point had been for the greater good, would you accept your fate? I mean, I'm not a huge fan of thinking about my own death. I do like movies that get me thinking. That got kind of depressing. So the basic plot of this movie is Dr. Stephen Strange is an extremely successful neurosurgeon who gets his hands messed up in a car accident. Being that he's a neurosurgeon, his hands are a huge part of his job. So he's devastated when he can't get his hands back to the way that they used to be. He hears of a person on the other side of the world who can help heal him. So he travels across the world to find out it's not quite what he expected. He finds out about this evil man named Caecilius. Caecilius? I don't know how to say it. This guy. Turns out he's been working with Dormammu to either take over the universe or destroy it. I can't remember at this point. Pretty much all MCU villains are trying to do the same thing. Doctor Strange defeats Dormammu and his henchmen and becomes the Sorcerer Supreme. Can we just talk about Dormammu really quick? I mean, how does this translate to this? Hashtag not my Dormammu. Number 3 spot on my list goes to Captain America Civil War. It's kind of fitting seeing how this is the 3rd Captain America movie, and this is the 3rd entry on my list. I'm gonna be honest, I was just a little bit let down when this movie came out. It didn't really feel like that much of a civil war, but it was good regardless. This movie had what we had all been waiting for in the MCU, Spider-Man! I still get chills when I go back and watch the 2nd trailer for this movie.
On the roof!
Hey everyone.
Other than the major problem of it not really being much of a civil war, it's still a pretty good movie. It gives the Avengers a really good look at what destruction they've caused by saving the world, and how it impacts the lives of ordinary citizens living in this world of people who can control whether they live or not. All this time, the Avengers have been living above the common people of the world, but in this movie, they're finally brought down to reality. And they realize no matter how many people they save, collateral damage is a real thing. The number 2 spot on my list goes to Black Panther. Now sure, this movie has its problems like any other movie, but it's mostly with the CGI. Like in this particular scene right here. I mean, come on. Seriously? What was the budget on this movie? Wow. Big budget. Big budget. But looking past that, this movie is the best way to introduce this big of a character into the MCU. T'Challa is here to kick ass, take names, rule the country, and be a badass while doing it. I love the amount of detail and work that went into positively representing the African culture. Because let's be honest, it wouldn't be that good of a movie if it didn't have a believable setting or an all-white cast. I mean, who would want to see a movie about Black Panther full of white people, honestly? Another thing I love about this movie is Killmonger. I've heard so many reasons about why Killmonger is one of the best villains in the MCU, and I can totally agree with that. Killmonger was pretty much abandoned as a child after T'Chaka killed his father, so when he comes back with vengeance. He not only wants to defeat T'Challa, he wants to humiliate him, take over his empire, and ruin everything that he's worked so hard to build. Killmonger not only manages to nearly kill T'Challa, he takes the throne and starts to change Wakanda for the worse. Killmonger has shown that he will stop at nothing to ruin his cousin's life. And since he manages to pretty much do just that, he's gained a lot of respect and admiration, making him one of the best villains in the MCU, rivaling Thanos, the man who literally killed half of the universe. Yeah, think about that. Even after what he did, T'Challa still has respect for Killmonger, enough to give him one last request, which I have to admit is probably one of, if not the best quotes in the MCU.
Nah. Just bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships. Because they knew death was better than bondage.
In my opinion, one of the best quotes to come out of the MCU. Not to mention, Black Panther gives us this awesome handshake. Wakanda forever. Now I know I said I wouldn't include any of the Avengers movies in this list, but my number 1 spot goes to Avengers Endgame. I'm kidding. Number 1 MCU movie is Iron Man, the movie that started it all. This movie holds a special place in my heart because not only does it introduce us to an unforgettable character, but it gave Robert Downey Jr. a chance to redeem himself and get away from all the negativity that had been surrounding his name. I honestly don't know what to say about this movie. This movie is what got so many people interested in Iron Man and characters that are involved with him. I mean, let's be honest. You've probably heard of Iron Man before this movie, but who have really heard of Obadiah Stane, Pepper Potts, Happy Hogan, or even Rhodey? I'm kidding about that last one. Anyone who knew Tony Stark knows about Rhodey. I love how fresh this movie feels. When you watch an MCU movie nowadays, you get used to a lot of things because most of the movies have the same elements in them. For instance, just how many MCU movies have you seen that have a throwaway villain, overused CGI, or jokes that aren't even that funny? Probably a lot of them. That's because Marvel has gotten so used to using these elements in their movies. But with Iron Man, it was different. It was different because it was new. Sure, we had Marvel movies in the past that had elements like these in their movie, such as the Fantastic Four movies, the Spider-Man movies, the X-Men movies. But when Iron Man came out, it did these things in such a fun and entertaining way that we looked past those things and enjoyed this movie for what it is. A really good thing to have in your movie is the rewatchability factor. For instance, movies that don't have a high rewatchability factor are usually forgotten. It's usually because it wasn't good enough to go back and watch it again. This isn't the case for Iron Man though, not for me at least. I could go back and watch this movie as many times as I wanted, and I would still love it. So that does it for my top 5 MCU movies. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. And again, like I said, this is based solely on my opinion, so I'm sorry if your favorite MCU movie wasn't in this list. But do let me know down in the comments what your favorite MCU movie is. In about 2 weeks, I'll pick my favorite answer and announce the winner of the giveaway on my second channel. Yeah, I have a second channel. It's just for behind the scenes and outtakes and stuff like that. Anyways, have a good day.